Robert.
Hello.
Hi, Damien.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are
That's
you?
good. I'm doing good. So, I'm here for an interview for school for independent learning. And what I chose for independent learning is I'm learning Japanese. So, I would just like to ask a few questions, what it was like for you specifically when you were learning a language. So, one of my questions is, what motivated you to learn the language?
So the language I learned was Spanish. And the biggest thing that motivated me was being able to speak with my family because my grandparents pretty much exclusively spoke Spanish. And my grandfather spoke no English or refused to speak English, even if he did know a little bit. And I was never able to have a conversation with him growing up. And so, because it was a part of me, a part of my family, it was really important for me to get fluent enough to be able to, have conversations.
Yeah, I feel that. My family too. They speak Spanish a lot. We speak English too, but um, my family, I really like speaking Spanish with my family because it's one of the things that keeps us connected and pretty much keeps us grounded to our roots.
Yeah,
So,
that's it. That's what
yeah,
I wanted.
that's what I wanted to. So next question. What was your first time you've used your Spanish skills in a real life situation?
Um, when I was taking Spanish classes in high school, I think about the time that our teacher took us to a taqueria down the street to order in Spanish, and that was part of our grade. But technically, it wasn't real life because, he was standing right there. We were all in a line. The cashier knew we were all students, practicing Spanish. But I do think about that time because from there, I actually, the times when I would speak Spanish in the real world, I got confident ordering, I think, because of that assignment and because of that practice. And so I would make it a point whenever I was in a taqueria, a Mexican restaurant, I would make it a point to order in Spanish, even if like people I was with would make fun of me or whatever. So I would say that, like ordering in a restaurant.
So that would be kind of trying to like make it a habit. So you get
Yeah.
more. Okay.
Yeah, it was cool for me to have that practice like with my class, and then like I say, I think it made me confident to try that out in real life situations. Um, and so I wanted to make it a habit
Oh,
to
that's really
order.
cool. So next question. Um, what was one of your biggest struggles learning Spanish?
Um, in high school, because I started learning Spanish as a freshman in high school, I knew, some words here and there, mostly like cuss words and words that she would use around the house. um, and because I was around it in that way with my family, I knew the sounds really well. So getting the pronunciation and an accent wasn't hard for me. What was hard was, I mean, just the memorizing all the different things that I would have to memorize, all the new vocabulary I would memorize. And then once the grammar started getting really hard in like Spanish 3, I remember getting really frustrated. And so talking with my dad about it, because my dad also learned Spanish as a second language. For my mom, it was her first language. And I remember talking with my dad about it when I would talk about homework or something. And I would get so frustrated. I remember wanting to like cry sometimes because I would just feel I'm never going to become fluent. I'm never going to get this. This is so hard. Um, and my dad would tell me that honestly, that fluent, like that time when you become fluent in a language, it doesn't happen from studying in books, and it doesn't happen from the experience in a classroom. it happens when you put yourself immersed into an environment where you're living in that environment and you're forced to speak that language all the time, every day. That's when you become fluent. And you're just not in that environment when you're taking it in an English-speaking country where you're not forced to use it every day. And so that's for him. His experience was living in Mexico for a few months after graduating college. And I remember after hearing that and over again, when I would get frustrated in high school, I think that really formed my motivation for not only continuing with learning Spanish in college, but for studying abroad. Because I was able to take a trip with my Spanish classes in high school. When I was in high school, we took a trip to Spain for a week. And that was my first time out of the country, apart from Mexico a few times. That just opened my world and opened my eyes and made me so set. And especially what my dad had told me about becoming fluent on studying abroad. I want to study abroad. I want to live there. I want to do this for a long period of time, a whole year. So that became my goal. I really didn't care what I majored in college. All I cared about was that I would study abroad. And so kind of whatever major got me to that point was kind of how I ended up with the major that I had. But it was a struggle. I remember feeling so frustrated in high school. I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to be fluent. And I'm so glad that I didn't give up, because it really is true what my dad was telling me. You have to immerse yourself. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be real hard, and you're going to feel uncomfortable a lot. And that's just how it is when you learn languages. If you don't put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, you don't grow. You don't learn.
You don't absorb anything from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that was a really nice answer. I like that. That was a nice story. Okay, so after all this being immersed and having trouble and having all these struggles, when were you finally able to say proudly and confidently that you were fluent in Spanish?
Definitely happened when I was living in Spain, when I was studying abroad in Spain. I would say maybe 3 months in to my year in Spain. The first 3 months, honestly, the first month was hard. It was fun. Everything was fun. So much fun, but hard, because I remember before doing anything, like if you're living there, you've got to do regular stuff like go to the bank, open a bank account, verify my student like extranjero ID, go to the store, recharge your cell phone, like all these things where you have to talk to people. And even though a lot of people do speak English there, obviously that was not why I was there. So I was always not going to resort to English if I absolutely could. So I remember at first, phone calls were really hard too. I had to look for an apartment and like talking to people on the phone. I would write a script and just like try so hard to like, but as soon as they said something that I didn't prepare for on the script, I'm like thrown off and I'm like, I don't know what to say. And I would write things like, lo siento, estoy aprendiendo. I'm so sorry, I'm still learning. So I remember writing scripts before phone calls. I remember before going into the bank, like going through the conversation in my head. This is what they're going to say. This is what I'm going to say. This is what they're going to say. This is what I'm going to say. And really feeling nervous every time I would walk into, a place where I knew I had to talk to somebody. But I survived. Like you just do it, you try, you fail a little bit, and then you survive and you get better. And I think about 3 months in is when I really started to feel I didn't have to think before conversations anymore. And that realization was like, whoa, I just said that as a normal interaction with somebody without thinking before.
Yeah.
So I think like I don't have like a really great, this was it, this was the time, But I do remember that distinct feeling of like, oh my goodness, I no longer have to prepare a script or think so much before my conversations.
Yeah.
I do remember having my first dream in Spanish.
Oh.
And how cool that was. And it was around that time. It was maybe like 3 or 4 months into me living in Spain. And I remember hearing people say, when you're learning a language, a good way to tell, like, if you're fluent is when you have your first dream in that language. And then so I remember having my first dream in Spanish and waking up so excited. Oh my gosh, I just dreamed in Spanish. It happened. You know, I'm fluent.
Feeling like you unlocked or something that you unlocked.
Huh?
Kind of like having a skill that you finally unlocked.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you know it because you did it in your subconscious. Anyway, that was really exciting. So I do remember that, and just the happiness of not having to think so much before speaking.
Well, it seems like there was a lot of happiness, trials, a lot of wanting to connect with family, staying rooted. What do you think would have happened if you hadn't gone through that or haven't wanted to learn the language?
My whole life would be different. Everything, not everything about me, but a lot of what makes up my identity is that choice of learning Spanish and studying abroad and wanting to become fluent. It's shaped like all of my major life decisions, almost. You know, like where I had my first professional job and where I chose to live after college. And honestly, like what led me to my future life partner. And then of course, in turn, like, you know, I have a relationship with, you know, my life partner is somebody who is a native speaker of Spanish. And if again, like this is huge for me when I think about it, like if I wouldn't have learned Spanish the way that I did, I would have never met them. My life would be totally different, just because of that one choice. And I'm really glad that I made that choice. It's my one, like just being my passion. Languages are my passion. Spanish and Spanish speaking cultures, I've just grown to just love and not be able to get enough of. And that's really actually easy because there's so many Spanish speaking cultures. There's so much to explore. There's so much to immerse yourself in. And, but that's true, I think, of any culture. There's never an end to you discovering about that culture. And, yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of major life decisions.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very beautiful if you think about it.
It is. I always tell my students that learning a language, and you know, if it's Spanish, great, but any language gives you keys to doors that never would have even appeared themselves to you if you hadn't have learned that language. I always tell them, think of all of the experiences, all of the travel, all of the people that you have access to because you learned that language or because you're learning that language. And if you hadn't, you wouldn't have had access to any of that. It opens up a completely new world for you. That, I mean, yeah, I think about that. Like you say, I do think it's so beautiful. I think it's such a beautiful thought. And one of the best ways that as humans we can connect with other humans that we share a planet with that we never would have been able to connect with if not. Yeah. It's really a key.
Mm-hmm. Sounds really nice. Yeah, well, that's all the questions that I had for you today. So thank you for having this little interview with me.
Of course.
I enjoyed having you. I enjoyed hearing your answers.
I hope that that it helps influence, your motivation for language learning and your journey with Japanese, which I know that you're already excited about, but I enjoyed it too. This was great.
Yeah.